Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Source Material Podcast. We're coming at you with episode 208, I think. 208. This evening, we are cleansing our palate from the DC multiverse accident that happened last week. We'll just call that an accident.
So, that was unfortunate. That's what that was.
We are heading, like I said, back to the street.
There's some Wildstorm action in that Ray Palmer story.
Yeah, dude. Ray Palmer got shot across the universe in order to try the multiverse, in order to try and find his paradise, I guess you would say.
It's apparently like the new thing. Okay, if you don't like the universe you're currently living in, wander through the multiverse until you find the one that suits you. This is the plot to Voltron in season 8. It's the plot to the search for Ray Palmer. I'm sure there's a bunch. And right now, someone's doing CPR on a squirrel.
We're cleansing the multiverse palette, and we're heading back to the street. Street Level Starch is taking a couple buddies with him, and we're heading down, and we're going to visit the Punisher. That's right, the Punisher this week, and I couldn't have been more excited. One of my favorite characters, if not my favorite character of all time. Punisher Max Volume 5. This is the Slavers arc. This took place between issues, I think, 25 to 30. Okay, 25 to 30. And joining me here, Mark Radulich, the patriarch of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. Sir, are you ready to get your hands dirty, get your guns cleaned, head down to the street?
You know what Punisher comics never are? Confusing.
Well,
this shit's never complicated.
They're pretty straightforward.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to ever, like, cover the time that he turned into Frankencastle, or the time that he turned into the Avenging Angel of Death or something like that. But my curiosity is piqued, so maybe one day we'll have to go down. And I'm sure that's completely just utter rubbish to read, and not Frankencastle, the Punisher we're used to.
The Frankencastle, I'll kind of go to bat for. It's really stupid.
Well, okay.
The art in it is really cool. It's Tony Moore through most of the issues.
Okay.
Who was the original Walking Dead artist, and it's a fun comic. It's just something different, you know. I mean, I kind of like that. I'm glad he's not still Frankencastle, but I liked those issues as they were coming out.
And the man funding the legal defense fund for Frankencastle here is Chris Armstrong, contributor of the Unspoken Decade. Welcome back to the show there, Chris. I knew you were excited to talk some Punisher, so we're doing the Slavers. Is this a book that you read in the past, or is this the first time you got the chance to jump into this one?
This is the first time I've read this. I'm super anti Garth Ennis. I don't like Ennis in general. I've given him several chances over the years, and I'm always like, man, this is awful. But the one thing I have read of his that I liked was the initial Marvel Knights Punisher.
Okay.
And then he had a second Marvel Knights Punisher that I thought was really bad. And then the first Punisher Mac arc, I think the first 12 issues, I've read those, and I really liked that. But that's the only thing I've read as far as the Punisher Mac stuff. So this was new to me.
Jumping into this book, why are we doing this book here, Mark? We kind of touched on it before we officially started recording here, but there was a reason we chose to do this one. Let our audience know why.
Well, we would have done anything from the Punisher this week because Punisher Season 2 will be covered tomorrow on TV Party Tonight by myself, Jesse Starcher, Robert Winfrey, and whoever else opts to join us. Now, my understanding is that Season 2 of The Punisher was at least inspired by, based on, whistled at, fingered by.
What?
Over the clothes. The Slavers. Okay. There's also another arc that was talked about in a few articles that I read. I don't remember what it was. I remembered the Slavers. And then the little bit that when I finally decided for sure what we were going to do is I had seen some of the trailer for the new one, and there was a girl and a boy and a thing. And I said, okay, this at least, I feel like this is giving at least a wink to the Slavers arc. You know, none of the Marvel stuff copy. I mean, you know, if you look at, just as an example, Civil War, Civil War gave a wink and a nod to what the comic book arc was. But if you were really to sit and break them down, they were nothing alike, other than Iron Man was on one ideological aisle and Captain America was on the other one. at the end of the day, we needed to do something by the Punisher, and this came highly recommended on top of everything else. So here we are, the Slavers.
Me personally, I think that it was a good choice. Well, yeah, you're right. It's not. I had the chance to watch all of the second season, and this is definitely not word for word or strictly taken off the page represented in that season. I think there are. You could probably draw some lines between the two. The brutality of what we see in this issue or these issues are. That's the Punisher, John Bernthal's Punisher, all the way. There is some over-the-top violence in the second season of the show. So,
does he throw somebody through a plate glass window out of out a building?
Oh man, there's some good stuff that happens in this book. Some really straight up, oh my gosh, that's the Punisher all the way stuff for me.
I can't wait to when you get to what was your favorite part of the book, because it came right at the end of the last issue, and I don't want to get into it right this second. Let you host your own podcast, but wow, I'm doing that to somebody. That's,
oh jeez. All right then.
When I go on my vigilante killing spree, that's how I'm going about it. I'm doing what he does to the old man, but we'll get to it.
All right. Okay. Well,
Not to you, Jesse. Not to you.
That's I'm glad. Very glad. We talked about the creative team a little bit here. Garth Ennis is writing. We have pencils by Leandro? That I wrote that wrong. Hold on.
I think it's Leandro Fernandez.
Is it Leandro? Okay. I thought maybe I spelled his first name wrong. Leandro Fernandez, and then inks by Scott Koblish. I want to talk about the cover artist real quick for this Max series of volumes. Now, one of the things that always stuck out to me was Tim Bradstreet's take on the Punisher on the covers here. He's not the artist that's doing things on the inside. He's just supplying the covers. Tim Bradstreet makes Frank Castle look like my father-in-law, and it is unfucking canny. It is, and I don't like it at all. Because it's almost one of those things where it's like, man, you're not going to ruin the character, but damn it, stop it. Just stop it. If you look at those covers, the eyes, you can almost never see Frank's eyes. It's always, shadowed by his brow or whatever.
They're buried behind the hate.
It just reminds me so much of my wife's father. It's scary. But
was your father-in-law supportive of your marriage, or did he send you a video with someone on fire saying, "Don't marry her. Don't come here.
Don't come here."
All right, I'm done. I'll talk about it later.
All right.
I'm so excited though.
I know, man. It was a good arc. It really was. I think this is definitely one of the better stories, in my opinion. We'll get to Chris here in a second. We'll see if he likes it. But in my opinion, this is one of my. I'm glad we talked about this one. So here we go. Synopsis. And this is really nutshell, guys. I'm not jiving into a whole bunch of details. We'll talk about that here in a few. When Frank has his sights set on a local drug dealer, a young rage-filled woman by the name of Viorica takes the shot first. As the gang corner her in an alley, Frank saves the day in a typical brutal fashion, killing some of the gang, incapacitating a couple of cops by the names of Marcy and Parker, and then taking the distraught woman back to his hideout. There she tells him a story of how she was a slave in a near impenetrable human trafficking ring led by an evil man by the name of Christu Bulat. She explains to Frank that when she attempted to escape with her newborn child, Christu's partner/girlfriend Vera orchestrated it so that she would no longer try to run by having her newborn child killed. Incensed, Frank goes on a mission to put an end to Christu's operation, but runs into some heavy opposition as the police force has been manipulated to now have a zero tolerance for the Punisher's action. Not only that, if Frank thought Christu was bad, wait until you meet Christu's father, Tiberu. All right, so there it is. That is a synopsis that'll get you. That just whets the appetite for what we're about to talk about here. So, let's start with somewhat of a couple minor characters first. I want to talk about Marcy and Parker, the two cops that run into the Punisher first. He makes quick work of them, and they end up, they're not just bit players. In the past, you would see something like this where they would be bit players, and you wouldn't see much of them again. But in this case, they continue to be integral parts of the story, to where somebody who is involved with Christu, I believe is their superior, or at least somehow knows one of their superiors, decides to make the most of the fact that the Punisher took these two out by really increasing a dramatic effect of the injuries that they supposedly suffered at the hands. Lying, yes.
Exaggerating, I think, is what we're looking for.
There we go. And they do a press conference, and they say, okay, this is it. The Punisher's on their, he's on the list. We're taking this guy out. No more Punisher. We're not going to be tolerating anything that he does from here on out. Mark, we'll start with you. What do you think about these two characters here, Marcy and Parker, and their trials and tribulations as they go through these issues?
I think you need characters like this in the Punisher, and I said this before when we talked about Welcome Back, Frank. Manucci got that ill communication. Any Punisher story, that basically features a guy with a relentless bloodlust who just walks around murdering crooks. If you don't add to it, it's going to be a really boring story. Mm-hmm. So you need side characters with something going on to fatten up the storyline. I thought the story of two cops being used by the NYPD to prop up this like false flag, basically, that that they're going to take down the Punisher, and the only reason why they're doing this is to try to make to try to make careers for themselves. And so you've got these two cops that the Punisher spared and didn't really do anything to, but they're now part of this big lie that doesn't serve them anything. And things just get worse, and they get beaten up. And I thought they humanized the story, because without them, it's just the Punisher, essentially being a Terminator, walking around killing people with relative ease.
Yeah. Yeah, they do go through some stuff, because even though they were used to do this, they don't like that. Even though they're cops, they're on the right side of the law, they kind of see the use of the Punisher. They kind of understand
you kind of get from them the every cop point of view, and if you talk to like real police, I don't know if they would really cop to really wanting a murderous vigilante out there. But I'll tell you what, now that I say that, I remember when The Shield was on, and Michael Chiklis talking about how they wish they could be Michael Chiklis. They wish they could be Mackie. Mm-hmm. And Mackie would fuck people up, okay? Mm-hmm. Other than murdering his own fellow detectives.
Just a few times.
Just a little bit. It was only a little murdering. The stuff that he got away with, in terms of being brutal to the other, mobs in the city. He would talk about how other cops would, say to him outside, we can't get away. I mean, and they can't. If you discharge your weapon now, there's like a whole investigation that goes into it and everything
else.
You're
missing one bullet. There's got to be an explanation as to where the hell this one bullet's at.
Right. I mean, I don't want to get off on a tangent about, the concept and the reality of police brutality and all that, but I'll tell you this. Every cop I know has said we've never been under such scrutiny in our entire lives, and you can't just get away with, doing whatever, at least for the most part, your everyday cops. So I like the fact that they sort of voiced that. They voiced the opinion of the everyday cop, and how they struggle with something that everyone take a drink. Something that I've always brought up when talking about The Wire. There's always more. At the end of season 2, my friend Chuck and I watched it together. And when they do, I don't know if you guys have ever watched The Wire, but every season ends with a montage, kind of going into the future a little bit, showing you what happens after. Okay, so you remember at the end of season 2 where a truck pulls up, girls come out and go one way, drugs come out and go the other. And this is after they've just ended the investigation. They've arrested half of the Greek mob and everything, or whatever they really were. Yeah, my friend just looks at me and goes like, so the moral of the story is nothing stops drugs and bitches. And I'm like, no, nothing.
And that's a unstoppable juggernaut.
And that's I think a frustration for police. It's like, other than you have to get up and pay your bills, what are we doing as police officers when nothing works? It all just keeps coming.
When I first started reading The Punisher, I think one of the things that I took away was this was, Frank Castle's one-man war on crime. The ultimate goal, I always thought, was, okay, well, he's going to eradicate crime. But at some point, he has to take into account, like, that's kind of impossible. And
well, he even says it here.
Yes.
He's like, I'm never going to stop the flow of white slavery. I can just kill these people.
Yep.
And so he had like not a personal attachment to the girl, but a personal enough attachment. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He heard her particular story, and her particular story moved him to want to do something. But even he had to acknowledge this is a drop in an infinite ocean.
Yeah. This character under Ennis feels more in touch with reality than what I've read previously. This is the Punisher stuck in a superhero universe. Well, now you see him dealing with, especially in the Max line, things that are really dark, really horrible, that bad, the very worst part of crime. And he has to come to an understanding, or he already understands, that there's nothing he can do other than just be a force of nature and do whatever he can. Chris, I want to switch it back to you here, man. Marcy and Parker, did you have any commentary on these two?
I think Mark pretty well covered it. It's an issue of, like, it seems like, obviously I haven't read a whole lot of the Ennis run. I've read bits and pieces. But it seems like there's always, in any Punisher arc that's not dealing with, the Marvel Universe stuff, there's always an aspect of the law enforcement. There was soap in the Marvel Knights run, so you always get that element in it. I thought it brought a pretty interesting addition to the story that the cops were kind of going to go after Frank, although we never really see much of that. It mostly just played to the politics of the I think his name was Weston, and him dealing with the captain and them trying to further their career. And and Weston was really actually a cop on the take. He was working for the bad guys. Yeah. He was working for the slavers. And but I thought that they were used pretty well. And then towards the end, they kind of just fade out, and it just becomes Frank murdering people, which is what we all really want to see anyway.
Yeah, that's right. That's another thing that I liked about this comic with Marcy and Parker. Their struggle felt very real, and it felt unique. Normally you see cops in a comic book, you don't get to really know them. And when you look at Soap and his unfortunate partner and all that
existence.
Yeah, there was that was kind of humorous, kind of sad all at the same time. These two characters felt real to me. We hop into, when we first meet them, they're having a conversation. Parker is a small African-American gay man, and Marcy is like this huge, overbearing Amazon of a woman. And they're
also
both
gay
partners. But yeah, these two, an odd couple, I guess you would say, and to see them have to go through what they go through, it's interesting, and it adds that much more of a dimension to the book. I could have wrote these two characters off pretty easily. That I didn't. I cared. I was invested. I understood who they were, kind of a little bit about what their background is.
I feel like a successful Punisher story is never about the Punisher, but always, because he's like the weather. He's coming, whether you like it or not.
That's right.
And he's pretty much like out of control, and like the best you can do is get in your house, hold up a fucking umbrella, put on some mittens, but you can't stop the Punisher. So it's always about the people he touches and the people around him.
Moving on, we have our three villains of the book. We have Vera, we have Christu, and we have his dad, Tiberu. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, the interesting thing about, I think, Christu and what was the dad's name?
Tiberius.
Yeah, there's a clear gap in how they want to do business. Christu kind of views the whole thing as like he's running a business.
It's business, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't take anything personally.
Can I quick weigh in here and then hand it right back to you?
Yeah.
It's just like The Wire. This is what do you call it? Christu is Idris Elba. Tiberia is what's his face Wood. Despite the fact that Idris Elba just wanted to do business and get off the corners and make money and not have to deal with the cops. I can't remember the actual character's name, but Wood Harris was like, I guess I'm just a gangster and I want my corners. And it ultimately led to them going head to head with one another and taking each other out.
But yeah, Christu kind of sees it as a business, and even though he's doing, terrible things, obviously, whereas his dad, if they make money, that's incidental. It seems like he just wants to cause.
Bloodthirsty.
Yeah, he just wants to murder people. And
I don't think he's really
a soldier.
I don't think he's ever really left the war.
Right. Yeah, that's really all he cares about. As an aside, I'll give props. I don't think that Leandro Fernandez is like a super good artist, but one thing that he definitely does is give every character a distinct look.
Yes.
And which is kind of necessary with a book like in Marvel Universe, whatever, you can kind of count on characters wearing costumes, masks, whatever, to tell them apart. But in a book like this, when the Punisher's the only one wearing anything resembling a costume, it definitely helps to have each character have a really distinct and unique look. He kind of has like a Sean Chen meets Derek Robertson style, if that helps anybody. But his design on remind me of the dad's name again.
Tiberio.
Yeah, with the big nose and just the huge white mustache that takes up half of his face.
Yeah, he looks like if Gollum became a gangster.
Sure. Yeah, and his son resembles him quite a bit. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say. I'll let Mark chat about Vera if he wants.
And The Wire. Go ahead, Mark.
I don't actually have a lot to say about Vera. I mean, there's the person who got the whole ball running. There's the person that runs the day to day, and then there's the person that just keeps the books. And she kept the books. The one thing they say about her, and this is true, I have found, is she's the one that said this is how you're going to get through to the women. You've got to rape them in the day, rape them in the night, rape them all. Rape them until you've completely utterly broken their spirit. And okay, yeah, I get it. You've decided to be a criminal enterprising family. I might shock some people that there would be a woman who would join in and allow this to happen and give them the ideas. But I've seen this sort of thing happen before, in fiction, movies, whatever. So I wasn't entirely surprised at all. Given how sufficiently, we'll go with evil she is. I didn't think she met the most creative end. Oh boy, did that get saved for my favorite character. But I do enjoy a good throwing through a plate glass window out of a building.
Well, I mean, if you take a look at these three, Vera definitely did not have as much of a spotlight as Christu and Tiberu did. But I mean, she is right up there or right down there with the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
She's the one who, just like you said, orchestrated or at least, convinced these guys and explained to them, okay, you need to just continually rape them over and over and over. I'm pretty certain, I might have to read it again, but I'm pretty certain she's the one that's behind, and what's her name? Viorica explains she gets into your head, but I think she's the one that was behind killing the baby, or at least, put that all together so that would happen so she wouldn't run again.
Who better to know how to get into a woman's head than another woman?
That's right.
And women can be vicious to one another.
That right there is why I think when she meets her end, when the Punisher shows up at her apartment, he's already taken out these guards. Tiberio was probably going to come back for her because we didn't even mention. Did we mention, Chris? Did you mention about the fact that Christu was going to have his dad killed?
I don't think. No, I didn't even bring that up. But yeah, eventually it became obvious to him that was what he was going to have to do.
Just like Idris Elba and Wood Harris.
Tiberio is like one step ahead of him. He figures out that Vera's in on. She's the one that puts that plan in motion to try and get Tiberio killed. He ends up surviving, and he comes and looks at her and says, "I'll be back. I'll probably be back for you." Well, Frank shows up before that happens, and
yeah.
I mean, Mark.
Honestly, she might have gotten off lucky.
It's so funny because Frank just throws her up against that window over and over and over, and then he has her by the arm that one last time, and that was one of the moments that I had written down here for me, was when he had her by the arm, and you're like, oh man, because he tells her, he's like, you'll break before the window does. And I mean, I could potentially see him just continually throwing her up against the window until she finally dies, but unfortunately the window actually gives way. Now mind you, it's not that the window breaks, it's like the whole frame of the window comes out of the building and she goes down with it, but she's a bloody mess by the end of all that. And whew, I mean, props to the artist here. I mean,
it's vicious.
It is.
What we needed was to flash down to see like an old British guy, and it's like the drops of blood, and he's like, oh, and he pulls out an umbrella, and she just falls on top of him.
Completed scenes.
Director's cut. Okay, Mark, you've been wanting to talk about Tiberu here.
First of all, I love the dad. He's my favorite character in this whole story. I just the sure we could make money and be untouchable, but God, you're not really a man unless you're fucking murdering people on an ongoing basis. I love that like old codger like philosophy. The argument that happens between him and Christy, where Christy's like, I paid for you to be in a nice place and you're living in squalor. Like he's just like, you could make an argument like there's like a PTSD element going on here, but it's just much more fun to be like, no, he's just a cold-blooded murderer. He's essentially like a vampire. You know, he just lives to taste the blood of others. Mm-hmm. And so as a villainous character, I thought he was a lot of fun. But no one gets it better than he does in the end. Look, we've seen people catch fire before. Okay, we've seen the Wicked Witch melt from water, and we've seen people burned alive. But my favorite thing about that was using that opportunity for media purposes. They actually film it happening. They film Frank Castle setting him on fire, and the camera's on him, and Frank just kind of gets in the frame and says, "Don't come here."
Yeah.
That's the best. I wanted to see that in the Super Bowl commercials last night.
And now for a word from our sponsor.
To all the white slavers out there, don't come here. Just flash to someone be on fire. It'd be fantastic. And now back to the Patriots.
Well, Tiberu, he's built up as this guy who's been through all these horrors of war and being one of the moving, I guess you would say, forces behind some of the just horrible stuff that was happening during wartime. And just like you said, it's kind of like he has not moved on from that at all. And he just brings it to the streets, and he keeps it, keeps doing that, even though he's involved in this quote unquote business that he's
honestly
in.
It comes across like whoring was Christou and the wife's idea, and that he was kind of along for the ride, and that his son was like, whoring is a means to set you up so that you don't have to worry anymore and deal with things. And he's like, but like any other elder person, they have to have meaning in their life. They have to have a thing to do, and his thing to do was murdering everyone.
Mm-hmm. The ultimate moment, other than him, being set ablaze by the Punisher, is when Punisher tracks him down, and Frank has him, in that room. Tiberu's got this prostitute or one of the slaves there, and he's got a knife up to her neck. Frank's like, I don't have a clear shot, but he goes, I've got one word. And he looks at him and says, coward, in whatever his native tongue is. And he just drops the girl and takes off after the Punisher, forgetting the fact that he's like 80 years old.
Yeah.
The Punisher just makes swift work of him. At one point, oh man, the knee to the face of that guy. I mean, it just goes like straight up into his mouth. And I'm like, oh, God.
Jesse, you don't watch MMA, but I'll tell you, there's been many a fight that's been ended with a knee to the face. I mean, that is just bone wrecking, your nose or your face, man. I mean,
sometimes your foreheads get caved in.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've seen a picture of a dude who took a knee to the head, I think, and I saw an X-ray, and it was not good.
Granted, this was professional wrestling, but I mean, it's kind of art imitating life. Matt Riddle ended a match with Cassius Ohno on NXT in like seconds because he leapt across the ring and hit him with a knee to the head.
Oh, jeez.
That was the end of that.
Ugh.
No, I was right.
Well, yeah, so Tiberu takes the knee to the mouth, and then, the next thing you know, he's waking up tied to a chair. And
at one point, he's screaming at the Punisher while he's pouring gasoline. Let me out of this chair and I'll show you how a man fights. And it's like, we've already seen that. You had a knife and everything. It didn't matter.
Well,
you're done, dude.
That's the Black Knight, isn't it? Jesse knows about the Black Knight now.
I've learned about the Black Knight. Just but a scratch. Come here, I'll bite you. All right. I do want to say that Christou, man, the way he met his end too, like you could see that almost coming, because the cover of the issue is Frank learning about anatomy. All right. Yeah. He's like looking through anatomy books. You're like, oh man, this is going to be bad. This is going to be really bad. And then finally at the end, you learn that I think he's pretty much just educating himself on how to mess him up so bad to where he doesn't die. And he is actually awake enough to realize the situation he's in. Christou wakes up in the middle of a forest and his stomach is sliced open. Mark, I mean, what do you think of this death? He wasn't really dead at the time, but my gosh, could you get more gruesome than taking your intestines and hanging them on tree limbs while you're alive?
I tell you what, whatever it was you wanted from me, you'd get it. Like, I feel like I could stand up against a lot of things, but I'm pretty sure if I woke up and saw my intestines hanging from a tree like Christmas lights, I'd be like, okay, what is it? What do you want to know? Here we go.
Gosh, man.
Yeah, in the previous issue, Frank is contemplating like how he can get information. He basically says, these are Eastern European war veterans. They're as hard as it gets. And he says the things I'd have to do to break those men, to make them talk, would be extreme. And then the next issue opens with him, studying the anatomy books. And we see, towards the end what it took.
And that's what I like about the Punisher. It's a man who takes his job seriously.
He does the research.
That's right. We're focusing on these three, but ladies and gentlemen, if you have not had the opportunity to read The Slavers, trust me. Yeah, these three get it, but there are plenty of other death scenes throughout this whole book. People getting their heads blown off, Punisher walking into a room, laying people out. I mean, it is absolutely gruesome sometimes. So right up my alley. If you're talking to me and you say, hey, if you're going to recommend something that would represent what you get in season 2 of The Punisher, this is pretty damn close. This is really close.
Again, if it's not necessarily based on the plot, it's at least thematically.
Oh, it's faithful. John Bernthal and his representation of the Punisher, the stuff that you see him go through in season 2 is faithful to what I think the Punisher would have to go through. One of my, I kind of get flack for this, but I liked Punisher Warzone. I don't know if you guys remember that movie, but okay, that was, to me, what I wanted to see the Punisher do. He gets rid of some villains in there, some pretty gruesome ways, and that's what the Punisher is supposed to be about. That's what he does. He is going to take a life, and it's going to be a memorable way usually in how he does it. And it's not easy getting there. He gets the shit kicked out of him 9 times out of 10, but he gets the job done. Same thing here. In this book, he is getting the job done. He goes through some stuff, not as much as I could tell you right now. Bernthal's character goes through a lot more than what we see this Punisher iteration of Punisher goes through. But regardless, it's vicious, brutal. All those words we've already used 10 times tonight. That's what I want to see my Punisher. That's what I want to see my Punisher being represented as. So, but yeah, this iteration of Frank, and we can go around the table on Frank, just, last words on Frank, and then we'll give final words on the book. But
we're not going to talk about the social worker?
I really didn't have, Mark, you...
Can I first say that...
a necessary member of the cast.
Dear America,
that concludes my
Dear America, not all social workers are black women. Thank you. Some of us are men, white men even. It's just like every time you see the social worker presented, this is why I wanted to bring this up. I'm going to get on my soapbox. Do you mind?
Were you inspired to go into this field from Norm Macdonald's sitcom?
No, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Disappointing.
No, as a matter of fact, when I first decided to go into social work, it was to work with kids. It was to try to. Jesse knows. I briefly worked for a porn production company in the production side, not the talent side. Though I am on one of the videos getting hit in the head with a guitar, but that's besides the point. So I'd worked for this company. I met a lot of girls, and and they all kind of had the same story, and that was kind of what inspired me to want to go into social work initially, was to try to get with these people before they become what they become. So initially it was to help children get out of shitty situations. I've worked in child protective services. I've worked in foster care, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody came to this podcast to hear my biography or my resume. But the point is, I hate the way social workers, and to a lesser degree, psychologists are represented in movies and in television. I know everyone thinks anger management with Jack Nicholson and Adam Sandler is funny. I hate that movie with a passion. I've been doing this for over almost 20 years now. Gosh, I'm old.
Old man Radlich.
And it's like, I don't ever really get to see it represent. We're not all doe-eyed, fucking save the world people. You know, like the one thing I like about the way this character is drawn, the way she's written, is she does come to realize the hopelessness of what she's doing, but she's driven to do it anyway because it's the right thing to do, even if you're not going to save everybody, and some of the people you do save will go back to doing what they were doing, which is what they say at the end of the book, right? Some of the girls went back to hooking, that sort of thing. But you are still driven to do what's right because it's the right thing. And so this, I thought, did a better job of representing the social worker in media than most other places. But I feel like most of them get it wrong. Most of them make social workers, like they're always drawn as like tunnel vision, like they only see their point of view. And some of them are like that. God, I've had some guardian ad litems in my time who I'm pretty sure thought they were the only people on earth, them and the kid. But we're just not all that way. And certainly, and this was more of a tongue-in-cheek thing for me. It's like, we're not all black women, okay? God damn it, I know plenty of male social workers. And we all now work in jails. No, God, I'm good now, thanks.
Obviously, she was the one that was trying to help Viorica, whatever. The young Veronica. She was trying to help her off the street initially, and then she got wrapped up. And of course, her good intentions ended up with some very bad results, with the death of that baby. And she was actually,
which happens.
She was sent a picture of that to her email, just to kind of say, hey, look, this is our turf. We don't need you interfering anymore. But either way, I think one of the realest moments that I remember her having in this book was after Frank sat down and had the discussion with her and said, okay, I need information. At the end of it, Frank leaves and she knows his intention is to go and he's going to go kill some people. And she proceeds to go to the toilet and throws up because she's like, what did I just do? She knows that this force of nature is being unleashed and she assisted him. So she's like, she cannot.
Yeah, she's an accomplice to murder.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is, as much as I joke around about this stuff, I mean, can you imagine you being complicit in a murder?
No.
Like it's someone died and it's because you said the wrong thing to the wrong person or you were in some way complicit, how that would weigh on your conscience. Most of us who aren't sociopaths.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, we'll get into final thoughts. Chris, we'll start with you. I mean, you said you came into this, you said sometimes you're not a fan of Ennis's writing and sometimes you are. What's your thoughts on the Slavers?
Well, I'm not a fan of Ennis in general, but I did like that first Punisher Max arc, and I always hear how good it is. So I kind of knew it was going to be worth my time. I did like it. There are some times where Ennis, especially, kind of like Mark Miller, like they just go overboard and go extreme.
Oh my gosh, man! The racial epithets or whatever you want to call them throughout this book was all over the top.
Like the gay slurs and the racial slurs. Like, I get he's trying to paint a picture of how these characters interact in their world, but sometimes it just makes me roll my eyes. But that's only one of the reasons I don't like Garth Ennis. But overall, this was a lot of fun. It was super depressing at times and really grisly, but you kind of expect that from a Punisher book.
This might be the first book I've ever seen a dead baby in. I mean, real talk. I think it might be for me.
I can't say the same. But I mean, that Teen Titans book, I guess that was like a 3 or 4 year old kid that Trigon.
Oh, it's true. He dusted her.
It wasn't like a newborn baby like this one.
No.
But if you've ever read Officer Down,
no,
which has a movie adaptation, I think there are several dead babies in that one.
Gosh.
But
is that a DC or Marvel book, or is that?
I think it was an Image book. Joe Casey and Chris Burnham did it. It's like a one shot, I believe, and it's kind of a comedic, like super over the top violence. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, the ending you mentioned earlier, like the Punisher puts a stop to this particular slave ring, but he knows that he hasn't really done anything in the grand scheme of things. And the girls he did save, he hears from the social worker, some of them have died, some of them have gone back to being prostitutes. And the main Viorica, you see her at the end of the book, basically, she sees a baby and it just puts her into anguish. So like her life is basically ruined, at least temporarily. So it is a harsh look at a serious real world problem. But it is a good Punisher, story.
Garth Ennis is not known for writing a happy ending. That's for damn sure. I mean, I remember reading Preacher and all the horrors that came with Preacher. It was just one thing after another to make you go, oh my gosh, this is just it. Some of it was arseface, just disgusting, and you felt for the characters that were going through there. It was a tragedy, some of the stuff, and I think the Punisher himself is a good character for Ennis to take on, because he is a walking representation of a tragedy. Somebody who had to go through all those tragic events to end up where he was, and then continually the war that he fights is an unwinnable war, but he fights it anyway.
It's what a man must do.
He has to celebrate the small victories, and so all right, Mark Radulich, what's your final thoughts here, man?
I like the book. It was a good, simple story. I feel like there was a Batman novel that kind of started the same way, where Batman comes across this kid. Turns out the kid was part of a prostitution ring, and he digs and he digs and he digs, and eventually finds himself in Thailand. This is actually what inspired me to write my initial, my first college thesis was prostitution in Thailand. Came out of a Batman novel. Go fig, right?
Nice.
But I think in that one, like somehow Batman stopped the entire ring, and that was the end of prostitution. It's like, this is more realistic.
Oh wow, no, that's the end of prostitution.
I don't remember all the details to it, but I feel like there was it had much more of a happier conclusion than this does, where it was there's an where again it's like The Wire. It's like there's an acknowledgement that the people that that were involved in this are gone, but what difference does that really make? That this will continue to go on so long as people are willing to pay for sex, there will always be paid for sex. In whatever form it takes.
I'm glad I had the chance to read this. Like I said, excited that we got the chance to cover it here, along with our discussion on Punisher Season 2. They're happening tomorrow. So,
can we talk a little bit about the first season of The Punisher?
My first podcast, the TV party tonight that covered the first season of The Punisher, had 67 people on it. It went 900 hours.
What? I was part of that panel, I believe.
I by the time it was over, I had grown a year. I had gotten and beaten cancer. God, that was a long discussion. Frodo got rid of the ring in less time than that podcast took, but be my guest.
Well, funny you should say that, because I just finished the first season like a week ago.
Yeah.
Because I'm constantly way behind, especially the Marvel shows, because even though I like most of those shows, every episode is this should have been half an hour. This should be 10 half-hour episodes instead of 10 or 12-hour-long episodes. They just drag, and it's like a slog to get through. And I like most of those shows, and I really like The Punisher.
Free and I have said consistently the Marvel Netflix shows are about 3 to 4 episodes too long.
Yeah, exactly.
You're probably, when you get to Season 2 of Punisher, the argument's still going to be there. Unfortunately, they haven't learned their lesson, in my opinion. But go ahead.
So the first season, which again I liked, the whole time I was kind of as the season progressed, I was like, this isn't really the Punisher that I like, as far as he's got too many associates, too many quote unquote friends. And I'm much more of Punisher as a lone gunman type on his own.
You don't like Punisher hitting on the suburban mom?
Yeah, I didn't really like. I mean, again, I liked the show, but there was just something about it. And I'm all for a different interpretation, in different media every once in a while or whatever. But it wasn't really the Punisher that I'm a super big fan of. And it seemed kind of like as the season got to the end, that they were setting up for the future seasons to be more of what I'm interested in, which is just Frank murdering people. Mm-hmm. So you've seen the second season. Have I set myself up for a fall?
No, I mean, there's definitely,
and I'm sure it's going to be kind of slow regardless.
Yeah, I mean, he's still got.
It's going to be more like Punisher on his own, mowing down mobsters.
Yeah, he's still got associates. You got some recurring characters such as Madani, Jigsaw, and Kurt. I think Curtis, was that his name? The guy, his buddy that...
The black guy?
I can't remember. I think his name is Curtis.
Yeah, that was a big letdown to me at the end of season 1 when he was sitting in that...
Support group?
The support group, yeah. Because I was like, that's not the Frank Castle I know.
No, he's... I know where you're coming from here, because it's not like he's out to deal with his issues in any way. That is not Frank Castle. Frank Castle uses that shit to fuel the fire.
Right.
No, but but you got to remember, these shows are not just supposed to appeal to the hardcore Marvel fans. It's supposed to have mass appeal.
Yeah, we had a discussion, because a lot of what you felt like you were getting in that first season was a commentary on like PTSD.
Yeah, it was a love letter to veterans.
Yeah, PTSD. My favorite representation of Bernthal's Punisher happened in the Daredevil season. Season 2.
I thought season 2 of Daredevil was probably the best thing Marvel Netflix has done.
Yeah, there you go. I was waiting for Mark to pitch in there, because I made the same mistake of saying the same thing, and he's like, "Well, wait a second, don't forget about the other half of Daredevil where you have Elektra."
I was just gonna say the Punisher parts of season 2 of Daredevil are fantastic. The Elektra part, I wipe my ass with.
So no, I thought I didn't have a problem with the Elektra stuff. I haven't seen season 3 of Daredevil, which I hear is really good too.
Oh, it's the best. It's so good.
Is it? Now, see, I haven't watched it either.
That one was based on Born Again, and that actually was you couldn't do an entirely faithful ode to Born Again, because you're not gonna have Captain America in it and shit like that. Right. But as far as the idea of breaking Matt down and rebuilding him, I thought it take season 1, drop season 2, and connect it to season 3. 1 and 3 tell a perfect story.
Okay. Are they supposed to be getting rid of all the Marvel shows at some point on?
Well, okay. In theory, the Marvel shows will all end up on Disney Plus. Nothing's been announced about that. I mean, there are certain Marvel exclusive shows for Disney Plus. Disney Plus exclusive Marvel shows, I should say, just like there are Star Wars in production right now. They haven't announced necessarily what they're gonna do with. I mean, the rumor is they'll restart all of the Marvel Netflix shows on Disney Plus, but nothing's been formally announced.
But have they given like a date on when they're removing the Marvel stuff from Netflix?
Probably when Disney Plus goes into effect.
I assume Netflix would have the rights to keep that stuff if they wanted it. I don't know how all that works, though.
I think...
So Disney made a deal with Netflix years ago for their content. That deal is going to eventually expire. When that deal expires, then they will have no Disney content on Netflix at all, because it'll all be on Disney Plus.
Cool. Okay. All right. Well,
they announced that Jessica Jones and The Punisher have been canceled. Those are the only two that haven't been canceled, right?
I don't think they've been canceled.
No, they haven't announced. Well, right now, Jessica Jones is set to come out later this year. If it's anything like last year, it'll come out sometime in like March or April. As far as Punisher, I mean, they announced the cancellation of Daredevil, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist pretty quickly. And Punisher dropped a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
So with that being said, I mean, I don't know. I remember I watched one video, and they were like that Netflix canceling them as soon as they were released was like a message to Disney. Whether or not they're going to keep doing that, I honestly couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
What'd you think of the relationship between Frank and Microchip in that first season there, Chris?
I kind of liked that. I was glad they used Microchip. I guess a little disappointed that it wasn't Wayne Knight he was cool. I didn't really like as much all the stuff they did with Frank and Microchip's family as much. But again, a lot of that goes to them. It seemed like they were really dragging everything out. But I didn't have a problem with Microchip or their relationship. It was more his relationship with the character who becomes Jigsaw and his relationship with the black guy that runs a support group. Like, I just thought he had too many allies. And if it's setting things up for him to turn into, the Punisher that I'm more familiar with, I was all for it. But
could you tolerate Madani? Because that was one of the sticking points.
Which one is Madani?
She's the female cop.
Girl, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I thought she was okay. I didn't really have a problem with her, and she didn't have that much interaction with him anyway. See, she seemed kind of stupid, like that she was so easily controlled by the Jigsaw character.
Yeah, Billy Russo.
But yeah, I thought she was fine. I didn't really have a problem with her.
Yeah, that was the one point I remember just getting. I'm like, okay, I'm tired of this. I didn't want that. I didn't need that in those. You talk about being 3 episodes too long. You take her whole story out of there, and I was like, take it all out of there, and then just. But she's a necessary evil. Well, I can tell you, in the new season, she's tolerable in my opinion. She doesn't grate on me as much, as she did in that first season. So I think when you get into the second season, it's. Oh, man, it ratchets up the violence. It ratchets up the brutality. Oh my gosh,
the last couple episodes of the first season, they were really starting to go kind of crazy with that, and I was really digging it.
First episode, man, is a great tone setter when you get into that second season.
I'm thinking about just skipping the second season of Luke Cage and Iron Fist. Not because I didn't do it.
No, don't do that. No. All right, Luke Cage, what do you call it? Iron Fist, whatever. You don't want to watch it, don't watch it. But don't sleep on that second season of Luke Cage. It's so good.
I mean, there's probably how many concerts, Mark? What, like 10?
Not
per episode? Not enough concerts? Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, I like the first season of both of those shows, but it's like, do I want to invest another 23 hours of my life into watching those second seasons? I might just skip those and get to Punisher and Daredevil and then come back later maybe. But
it is messed up how excited I was to want to watch Luke Cage and excited I was to watch Iron Fist, Daredevil. I remember when that first season of Daredevil dropped and I was so, I was like, oh man, here we go. And now I'm right there with you, dude. I have the second season of Luke Cage to watch. I got the second season of Iron Fist, the third season of Daredevil. And it's like, I don't know if I can find the motivation to go and watch these because number one, I've been hearing stuff about them already.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I want something to happen in there that makes me excited. And it just doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of excitement going on in some of those series. Now, if Iron Fist turns into a building, Mark, I might be invested. Doesn't happen though, I guess, in that second season. All right, this brings our discussion about Punisher of Max, Volume 5, The Slavers, to a close. We'll get into plugs here. Thank you, everybody that had a chance to listen to us tonight. And, of course, thanks to Chris and Mark for coming on here and talking about this with me. Chris, we'll start with you, man. Do you have any plugs, sir, that you would like to put out there?
You can follow me on Twitter if you'd like at BrodyMan34. Check out the UnspokenDecade.com. It's a 90s comics fan site. Hopefully I'll have something up new on there soon. I know that there's always new stuff popping up on their Facebook page. So check them out.
Yeah. Who is it that does most of the posting there? Is that Simba Fan?
Simba Fan. I can't remember his real name. I know it. I can't remember it. But yeah.
He is a post monster.
Yeah, he is. Like I used to post some of those Facebook updates.
Same here.
And then I was like, you know what? He's got it under control.
I mean, he legit does 3 a day, at least 3 a day. And I'm like, I don't want to add to, I certainly don't want to feel like I'm really bogging people down with all the posts. So he can have at it. But okay. Anything else, sir?
No, that's it for me.
All right, Mark Radulich, the schedule, please.
All right, as I said, tomorrow we'll be reviewing Punisher Season 2. On Wednesday, we'll be reviewing on the Metal Hammer of Doom, Beast in Black.
Oh, yes, there you go.
And then this Saturday, we're back on Big Fox for live commentary. Leo Santa Cruz versus Miguel Flores. Myself and Pat.
Boxing?
Myself and Pat Mullen will be bringing you all the action live. And the last week, during the Super Bowl halftime, Pat and I jumped on the old computer and we did commentary for the halftime Heat 6-man tag match that was on the WWE Network between NXT superstars Aleister Black, the Velveteen Dream. Call me up, Vince. and Ricochet, the human highlight reel, versus Adam Cole, baby.
Which you could not stop saying that, apparently. That's just part of his name now.
Yeah, Adam Cole, baby.
Shout out to Ricochet, even though I hate wrestling. He is a local boy from the next town.
Really?
Here. Yeah.
He is truly the man that gravity forgot. He is incredible. Tommaso Ciampa and Mr. Wrestling, Johnny Gargano. It was a hell of a match. It was a lot of fun. It was certainly better than the actual halftime show, where apparently somebody was cursing and had to be bleeped a bunch of times. My wife made it a point to mention that while I was on the air. So there's that. There's the review of Voltron season 8. Let me tell you something, folks. I watched the last few episodes with my son, and my son got to watch me boo-hoo cry at the end of Voltron.
Oh, that's that sweet. Emotional, huh?
That was a rough one to get through, man.
And now, is that the final, overall ever?
Yeah, Netflix is done with Voltron.
Oh, that's sad.
Unless they do Vehicle Force, this iteration of the Lion Force is done. And in theory, assuming Sean didn't forget, we did an on-trial for Pan's Labyrinth. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. You'll have to check your Rattlegion Broadcasting subscription. Next week, we've got DC Looney Tunes 2, Alita Battle Angel on Damn You Hollywood. We'll welcome you back to Avantasia on the Metal Hammer of Doom. And speaking of Netflix series, Andrew Graham and his lovely wife will be coming down from our Canadian office to review The Crown Season 2.
All right, very good. All right, well, hey, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jesse Starcher. By golly, we'll put the old canned plugs here in at the end. To send us one out of here, that's Chris. Over there's Mark. I'm Jesse. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for joining us. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
I'm ready to get all up in the slavers.
That's controversial already.
Fuck the slavers all night long.
All right, then. Manucci.
Oh, shit. Manucci got that ill communication. Manucci got that ill communication.
I know you ain't going to forget that. Pronunciation bridge is in full effect here, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, I've never seen The Wire.
Hey, ask Mark what his favorite show is.
I bet I don't have to ask.
And she threw him out the window, the second story window. Captain Marvel, faster, longer, harder.
Not the real title.
Hey, knock it off, asshole.
Link in the description.
Syphilis didn't show up to try to tear apart the multiverse.
Thank goodness.
Until the robots. Robot prostitution will be the end of human prostitution.
All right. Can't think of a better note to leave this podcast on.
I can, because there are people who are now starting to see what I see. They're seeing the future. They're seeing the future of robot prostitution and are asking the question today, don't those robots deserve rights too?
One guy was saying, I would never use one. That's ridiculous. I would never do anything like that. And the other guy was like, look, imagine you're at home, your wife's out of town, and all you have to do is say, hey, Alexa, give me a blowjob.
If you're up for jerking off, there's no reason why you can't fuck a robot. That's what I say.
Punisher Max, ladies and gentlemen.
Explicit content.